In today's video, I'm sharing with you all of my photo and video apps. Let's get right into it. Hello friends, welcome back to another Google Pixel video. I hope you have been enjoying these videos so far. I feel like I'm dwindling down in terms of ideas for these Google Pixel videos, so if you have any suggestions for me or if you have any questions or things that I haven't really addressed so far since getting the Google Pixel 10 Pro, do let me know in the comment section so that I can create some more videos for you. But in today's video, I am answering a question that I received, I believe, a couple of times in the comments, and it is about my photos and videos apps. I have a whole folder dedicated to photos and videos on my Google Pixel 10 Pro, so I am going to go into that folder and share with you all of those apps and talk about them in a little bit more depth than in comparison to the video where I did what's on my Google Pixel 10 Pro, where I kind of just looked at the new apps on my phone and didn't go into any apps in particular super deeply. And by the way, for people who ask me every single time I do one of these videos, I have the Google Pixel 10 Pro in the standard size. The color is Jade behind this case, and the gigs are 256 gigs. I think that's what it is. Now I am sharing my screen and I'm going to go into this folder at the bottom left-ish corner, and this is the folder that I have that has like all of my photo and video stuff in there. Now I will admit some of these apps I do not use frequently, but it's still there. It's kind of default that it is there, and I'll just talk you through the things. So the very first thing is Instagram. I think it's pretty self-explanatory what Instagram is. I post on Instagram. Instagram is probably my biggest platform at the moment because I have been on it the longest. So I have it first so that I can click into it really quickly, really easily. The next app right next to it is the camera app. So, of course, I want to be able to get into my camera as quickly as possible. So, I have that as my second app. And I've shown the camera app before in previous videos. So, if you want to see an in depth look into that, you can definitely check that video out. The next app I have next to it is just my Photos app. And if you did not know, I use this space to obviously capture all of my photos and videos, grab my photos and videos, but also edit my photos and videos. I edit in here mainly. Like, this is just a random picture that I snapped in New York City, but I edit in here. I edit using just the edit function right here. I've done a video like this recently as well, so you can check that out as well. But I do most, if not all, of my editing in here, with the exception of like some video third-party app that I use, which I will show you in a moment, but this is where my main editing stuff happens. The next app that I have is TikTok. Again, another self-explanatory app. It's just a social app, and it's one of my main social apps that I like to click into, so I have it right at the top as well. And it's where I post a lot of photos and videos, so of course it's going to be in there. And then the next row starts with the app called Cosmos. Now this is kind of like a Pinterest equivalent, but it's a little bit more aesthetic. It's a little bit more vibey. There are no ads in here, and so I love this space, this hub, if you will, as like a source of inspiration. I come into here and I do a quick scroll and I get immediately inspired. You do have a profile that looks very similar to Pinterest. And it is a social app, but I don't really consider it a social media app, to be honest with you. I do not really connect with anybody else on here. I'm not commenting, I'm not sharing on here for social media growth or anything like that. I truly look at this space as like a hub to find inspiration, to find photos that are inspiring, and to create little clusters here of different things that inspire me based on the topic. So you can see I have different clusters for different things. I have a fruit one where there are images of fruit. I also use this for my Substack, and whenever I want to do mood boards to accompany a Substack post. So you can see that there are things such as Farm Girl Summer. I did this for a Farm Girl Summer post on Substack. I also do my monthly reflections that are on Substack in here as well. I do a mood board for that particular month in here as well. I just recently did this one for my little author post that I posted on Substack. So this is really just a space for inspiration and not necessarily me like posting on here or putting anything in here or using it for editing purposes. The next app right next to it is TikTok Studio. This is sort of like an analytics kind of app. Oh, as you can see, I have not opened this app, I think, since getting the Google Pixel 10 Pro. So you can clearly see that I am not using it often, but it's sort of like an analytics base to look at the analytics, look at the performance of my TikTok posts. And so it just shows a lot of data, like back end data. It also has some inspiration stuff, like things to get you inspired, tips, tricks, stuff like that. So it's really a companion to TikTok. And as you can see, I don't really use it. But I do definitely use CapCut. I don't know why it's asking me all of this, but I do use CapCut. And this is the second thing that I use for editing. So most of my stuff is edited again in the Photos app, like I showed you before. That is mainly like photo editing, 99% photo editing, also video editing. But if I want to splice together a lot of clips for like a vlog, let's say, I use CapCut for that because it has the splicing feature. I can add like 20 clips in here and then I can start splicing it all together. So for example, it's not going to show me anything because I tend to delete my videos. So it's not going to show me actual clips. But as you can see, I like splice together multiple clips down there at the bottom. And so that's how I create types of videos that are like vloggy, my slow morning routine kind of vlogs where I'm typing on my computer. That's where I do those kinds of videos in here. And I keep it really simple. I honestly just splice things together. Sometimes I'll add text in here if I want to animate the text, but aside from that, that's all the editing that I do in here. Very, very simple. As you can probably tell with all of my photo and video editing, I keep things as simple as possible so that I can push things out as quickly as possible. And also I like to just keep my content simple because I talk about slow living and that is really a simplified kind of lifestyle, so I don't need to do crazy edits. But the next app next to CapCut is Edits, and I don't think I've used this app since I've downloaded it or had it on my Google Pixel 10 Pro. As you can see, there's nothing in here, but Edits is the equivalent of CapCut, but for Instagram. So you can edit in CapCut videos and photos and stuff like that. You can do the same exact thing here in Edits, but it is really partnering with Instagram. So you can actually pull things from Instagram in this hub. As you can see, there's an Instagram feed in here even. There are also notes and reels tabs and audio tabs, and all of these things are kind of syncing through Instagram over here. So it's a real good companion for Instagram. Again, it's like the equivalent of CapCut to TikTok. But what's really cool about this is that the analytics are in here as well. So whereas TikTok has TikTok Studio for analytics and has CapCut for editing and syncing really well to TikTok, Edits is kind of like a combination of TikTok Studio and CapCut put into one, which is really nice because it's nice and condensed and you have just one space for everything. However, as you can clearly see, I don't use it. Why have I downloaded it? I've heard that if you do edit in Edits and you post to Instagram, people will get a push notification if they follow you, and it would say something like, oh, Slow Morning Diaries used Edits to create this video, check it out, or this reel, check it out. And so it kind of gives you an incentive to use Edits because it sends an additional push notification to your followers. So that's just some random social media nerdy stuff if you're interested in that and why I have the app. But moving on to the last section, this last line here, and the app in the top is, or the app at the bottom, technically bottom left, is VSCO. Now, again, have not used this app. As you can clearly see, I'm not lying when I say that I only use the Photos app to be editing my stuff. But VSCO is an app that I used to use for a lot of my photo editing. And I wish that I can kind of like skip past this login area. Okay, we've opened up VSCO just so that I can show you what it looks like. Essentially, this is a hub for really aesthetic photo editing. You can start from like an image. I'm gonna try and grab an image just so that you can see what I'm talking about here. You can grab an image, import it into here, click on it, and then edit from there. And you can edit with filters, you can edit with like exposure, stuff like that. So this is really a photo editing tool, but I think VSCO, and a lot of people probably know this about VSCO, it really is emphasizing aesthetics and colors that are really aesthetic, a mood that's really aesthetic, as you can see from some examples over here. I used to use this a lot back when I wasn't using my Photos app to do this kind of work, but now that I have a style and I have a kind of like editing technique that helps me get a color palette and aesthetic, that works, I don't necessarily need to use this anymore. But it's still on my phone just in case I want to use it. Sometimes I'll plop an image in here for Sunday Paper House, which is my stationery business that I post on a completely different Instagram account. So I do keep it for like one-off instances, but as you can clearly see, I haven't used it since I got my brand new phone, and I haven't used a lot of these apps since I got my brand new phone. So anyway, moving on to Snapseed. This is another app that I have just always used in the past and have kept forever. It used to be my go-to photo editing app for everything back in the day, and I love it so, so much. But as you can clearly see, I don't use it anymore. I'm just going to show you what you can do in here, and one of the things that I really loved about this app is you can import a photo and you can edit from here. As you can see, you can do filters. You can also get into the nitty-gritty of so many different things. But one thing that I really, really love about Snapseed and why I keep it on my phone, even though I technically don't really use it much anymore, is the perspective option. The perspective option allows me to really, really straighten a photo. And I'm kind of like nerdy about that. I love to have a super straight photo. So if I take a photo and it ends up being really angled like this one in particular is extremely angled the way that I initially took it, I can go in and just straighten this up. And you can see that I did that pretty quickly. It's not perfect, but I went from this to this, and I love how like perfectly aligned it is. So I'm a really, really big nerd for something like that, and Snapseed is the best app that allows me to do that kind of straightening. And I know it's kind of crazy to keep a single app for a single use, but I keep it in there just in case. You never know if I'm going to need to use that. And I've actually had to use it a couple of times since like switching over to editing in the Photos app, because while you can do crop and you can adjust like this, you can't do that crazy cool stuff that I was doing in Snapseed just now, obviously. So I do think it's extremely helpful. Moving on to the next app, which is Retouch. Retouch is something that I paid for many, many years ago, and I absolutely love it with my whole heart because it can erase things that you don't want in your image, and it can erase really, really cleanly. So I'm going to use this image as an example here. It looks really blurry. I think it was the way that I use portrait mode or something like that. But anyway, I'm just going to show you how you can really quickly erase something here. So I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to select this little section right here. And I should have made that a little cleaner. I'm just going to select this little section right here, and then I'm going to hit go, and I'm going to show you how well it erases. Okay, that wasn't perfect, but I can still go back in and fix that. Okay, that's pretty awesome. Very quick, very easy, very intuitive, and back when I first bought this app, there was nothing like it out there. Now we have Magic Eraser in the editing app. And the Magic Eraser is actually pretty fantastic on the Google Pixel 10 Pro. They've made some changes to it, and I am actually quite impressed. Let me see if I can erase something really quickly here. That doesn't look great. It's probably not going to be as impressive as I'm saying, but it has certainly improved a ton since I started. Wow, I didn't even erase anything. Actually, it kind of just like made it look different. Anyway, that's a really bad example. Maybe I can use a different image for this example, but it is much better now, to a point where I don't necessarily need to use the Retouch app anymore, which is fantastic. However, I will keep the Retouch app for moments like this where maybe Magic Eraser is not actually helpful and I'm gonna need some extra help. So I pull out the retouch app. I'm going to try to do the same exact thing on the same exact image to see how Magic Eraser does it, because recently it's been doing a good job. There you go. Looks great. Looks fantastic, almost identical to what Retouch did. So long story short, Retouch is a fantastic app. I paid $4.99 for it way back when. I don't know if it's still $4.99 or if it's free at this point or it's discounted, but it's a worthwhile app in my opinion if you do things like that. And then the last app to share with you is Canva. Canva is essentially just like a graphic design kind of space. I don't think I really have to explain this too much, but I do my thumbnails in here. I do some video edits in here. I do some timestamp types of things in here. So it's really more on the graphic side of things if I want to do graphics or if I want to add like a graphic on top of an image, stuff like that. And I think that's all I can really say about Canva. It's pretty self-explanatory, similar to Instagram and TikTok. It's just one of those programs that I think a lot of people are familiar with. But that is all in my folder of all sorts of photos and videos type of stuff. Hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully I was able to go into everything in depth enough to kind of give you context and how I personally use these apps or not use these apps. I feel like half of those apps I don't actually use, but that is the reality of it, and maybe eventually I will use some of them down the line. But I think an important thing to note is that I do truly use my Photos app for majority of the things that those other apps that I have in the folder used to do for me. There was a time where I would post on social media and I would need to go through 3+ apps to get one photo perfect in order for me to post. And now with the Google Pixel 10 Pro and the recent Google Pixel devices, I've just used my camera and I've just used the editing feature in the Photos app, and that has been it. And I love that. I love that it has been extremely convenient and actually useful and helpful in just 2 apps. And so I would hope that I will no longer have to keep certain apps in that folder. But if you have any questions aside from the things that I talked about in today's video, definitely let me know down below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It is starting to get really dark. And I will talk to you in the next video.